Alrighty, how's it going? It's Alex Steffan here from Steffan Town Planning. Today I have Matt Jones joining me from the Property Resource Shop. Today we're going to be talking a bit about joint ventures. But before I get into that, Matt, thanks for joining us today. We met a couple of years ago over at Broncos Leagues Club at an event you run there. Do you want to give us a bit of a background on who you are and
yeah, mate, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to share any information with you guys. I know you do a fantastic job at Steffan Town Planning there, and we've done a lot of cross-pollinating over the years. Like you said, the Brisbane Property Networking Group that we run at Broncos Leagues Club has been going for, I don't know, like 12 or 13 years now.
Wow.
And you've played a big part in that recently over the last few years, sharing your insights there. So, yeah, I guess that's where it all started for me. Been doing property investing since 2005, using active sort of strategies, reno, subdivision, development, but more so joint venturing over the last since the beginning. Actually, we've been doing joint venturing from the beginning. We just didn't know it was called that back then. But yeah, the meetings have kind of weaved throughout all of that throughout the years, and we've met some amazing people and got to hook up with different joint venture partners through that event, meet some great consultants like yourself. And these days we're pretty passive. You know, we tend to fund deals rather than having others fund our deals, and that's where joint venturing has become really powerful in the way that it's kind of flipped around and given us the lifestyle that we want. But we're still really connected to the group and in deals and still enjoy what we do. We just get to choose a little bit more on how much time we put into it these days, which is great.
Yeah, that's amazing. So the reason why I approached you a couple of weeks ago to talk to our community is we get inquiries all the time where people either have a site that they want to develop, they might not have the money or the skill set, and joint ventures is something that I think a lot of people know about, but they don't know about. So they know there's this JV word that people use and they can somehow get money from someone else and do something, but it's not really super clear. And I'd love to, hear your thoughts about why someone would go into a JV.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, it is. We actually run an event, and it was used to be called the Joint Venture Boot Camp, and we changed it because the word joint venture was kind of intimidating for people. They kind of thought it was just for the big guns out there that did it, but in fact, it's JVs all around us. You know, so but yeah, I find joint ventures are in every deal, and in fact, every deal that we've done has been a joint venture or a money partner arrangement of some sort. And I know the developers that have all the components of the deal can fund it, can do it themselves. They still do JVs as well. So it's very prominent once you realise the power of it. But we all go into JVs in the beginning when something is missing. You know, so you're missing a component of the deal. So I find there's 4 key components to a successful property deal, and it doesn't matter what strategy you're implementing, but you need to find one in the first place, which is often underrated. It's not just jumping on realestate.com, and it's about having a network of agents and a strategy to find these deals that stack up. So that's the first thing you need. Second thing is cash, obviously, to put down a deposit and pay for your subdivision or your reno or whatever. Third thing is serviceability, so borrowing money from the bank or a financial institution. And then the fourth thing is skill and the ability to manage that deal to a profitable outcome. So if you look at those 4 key things, most people only have 1 or 2 of them. And so it's finding out which ones you do have and then going and finding the components that you don't have. And once you have that complementary resourced approach, that's when JVs really work. They don't work when you try and you hook up with somebody because they're a friend or someone that you trust already, and you think, oh yeah, you got some cash, I got some cash, let's go and do a deal together, it'd be fun. Those deals are fraught with danger.
Well, you're missing some of those key components there, it sounds like.
And it's more just about people going down on the ship together because they're too scared to go by themselves, which is fine, you know, but the deal itself has got to stack up first. So that first point is the most important one. Someone's got to have the deal. And if you don't have the time or the networks or the skill to find that deal, but you have the funds, the cash or the serviceability or both, then that's where it can work really well, where you can piggyback onto somebody else that has the deal. Especially now, the market's really hot. It's a lot harder to find deals. The listings are fewer.
Yeah.
So rather than trying to pierce into that market where there's so much competition, now's a great time to be hooking up with someone that's already got deals in the pipeline, because there are transactions happening, and then piggybacking onto them. So yeah, it's really about finding what's missing first, and then going out and finding that. And then there's I guess there's a whole nother component around, the logistics of putting a joint venture together.
Yeah. So it sounds like really to become a successful property developer, getting that whole team. I mean, you can't wear all the hats. I think everyone can kind of acknowledge that. I mean, we try to do it in business, we try to do it in our relationships. You kind of need multiple people to make something successful. So that seems like a very big reward. And if you're not doing a joint venture, I suppose you would still end up doing some kind of, if you're not formally going into a contract with someone, you'll end up paying someone to take over one of those roles anyway, like a project manager or maybe a buyer's agent or something like that. So
sometimes it's in the beginning, when I started, I was a postie in the beginning. No bank was going to give me any money. I had very little capital reserves, but I had skill. I was building my skill back then. So for me, it was about someone else had to provide the funding so that I can do deals. There was no other way of making it work, But then as you get better at it, you do more deals. It then becomes more about leverage, so that you can do more deals. You might do 3 or 4 in a year rather than just one, where you do it with your own resources. And I find most people don't look at joint venturing until they have to. And it usually comes about where they've hit a glass ceiling with the banks, and they're like, oh, okay, I can't borrow any more money. Now I've got to learn how to do JVs. So I find you're better off learning it before then, or start building that pathway before you need to. I encourage people to do it first. Even when you're just learning how to do property, it's a great time to get into JVs, because if you're in it for the long term, then you're going to have to do one at some point. So you might as well learn early. And I'm grateful that I was kind of forced into it early. Where I had to, if I was going to stop being a postie, I had to find somebody to fund deals. It wasn't going to work any other way. So I was sort of lucky that I was forced into it, whereas others kind of go along the path and then they get to a point and realize, okay, now I've got to learn JVs, which is fine. And then they start getting into it then. But what I find is most people get in there and they're like, this is a whole nother world. I didn't know this was available. I didn't know I could. They kind of feel like they've been doing it all wrong. Which is, it's not the case, but you just have this realization that you've missed so much opportunity along the way. You didn't know was there, which is great to have that realization at any time.
Yeah. So do you find there's, like, in your network of people with the Brisbane Property Group and Ultimate Property Hub and Property Resource Shop, all the things that you're involved with, do you find that there's kind of an equal amount of people that are trying to get into property development just with money, for instance, as there are with people with no money? Is there a good balance there? Or like, and the reason why I ask is I can't imagine there's hundreds and hundreds of people walking around going, I want to be a property developer, but I don't know how and can't be bothered. But I've got some money, so
Oh, it's quite. When you start digging, it's phenomenal how much money is out there to start with. Like, it's just incredible how much lazy equity, serviceability, that people have. That they don't even know. They don't understand how much capacity they have. So that's the first thing. Okay, work out what your strengths are. Go to Matt Punter, mortgage broker, and look at, okay, what can I do here? What can I bring to the table? But I find, funnily enough, that there always is a really good mix. Like, when we run the property launchpad, so it's a 3-day event, 30 people in the room, and I vet everyone that comes in. So I get on the phone, I qualify them first, because I want to make sure that they can bring something to the table, whether it's a deal or cash, serviceability. And I find I always get a good spread of people in the room that have deals and funding capacity. And then it's just about hooking them up. So I think once you start looking and you're clear on what you have and what you're missing, then it starts to show up. You start to open your eyes to what's out there and how you can connect with that.
Yeah, great. So I think the key rewards and reasons why you do a JV are pretty clear. It's about filling that whole piece of becoming a property developer, really. The obvious question I have now is, what are the risks associated? I mean, earlier today we had our team meeting and I put the question out there, and And the first thing that someone said is, well, what happens if you go into a JV and someone gets cold feet, or they run out of money, or they get divorced, like we spoke of, what in your experience are some of those key risks associated with doing a joint venture, and how could they somewhat be mitigated?
Yeah. No, it's a really good question. And that's where a lot of people do get stuck. And that's more based around fear, fear of all the things you said, losing money, someone ripping you off, looking like a fool, if you get it wrong.
Yeah.
And another big one is, okay, you're working with someone else's money now. So that becomes a bit more scary, and it should be. You're the custodian of someone else's money. It's not just yours that's on the line, it's theirs too, if that's the scenario that you've hooked up. So the biggest thing I think with joint ventures that people skip over, and I did in the beginning too, I learned this lesson the hard way, is not doing enough due diligence on the people involved.
Yep.
So it's normally about, hey, you got a deal and you've got some money, let's go and do a deal. Okay, that's in essence a good start.
Yep.
But you need to do a lot more work on, okay, who's in the deal, what sort of personality do they have, how well do they communicate? Because in the end, as you know, every deal has its curveballs and its problems, and all we're doing through the whole deal is just solving those problems to get to the end to make money.
Yep.
So you got to be able to talk to somebody about those problems, and resolve them in an adult way. So I actually set up what I call a screen method. So SCREEN, and it's just based around, or it helps people to formulate some questions around how to find or dig a bit deeper about the people that are involved.
Yeah.
So things around stress, conflict, expectations, exit strategies, all those things where you can kind of ask people about, okay, how did you, for an example, how did you, tell me about a scenario when you were, you left your last job, or maybe you left a relationship. How did you deal with that? And just let them speak. And you kind of get an understanding of how they deal with those scenarios. Did they leave a trail of destruction behind them? Did they do this big rant on social media? Or was it handled in an adult manner with good communication skills and, took responsibility? So you get to find out pretty quick just by asking a few key questions around how they react in those scenarios. And we even do personality profiling, where we get someone to actually complete a questionnaire to help us understand how they react in those scenarios. Because there's nothing worse than getting halfway through a deal and finding out something about the person, or maybe it's a bit out of their depth, or they're out of their league and they freak out. They want to pull out of the deal.
Yeah.
That can be really troublesome in the middle of a development. Yeah. So you want to have people in there that are there for the long haul. They understand the risks. They have the right expectations about the project, and you get along. You can sit down, have a cup of tea, have a cup of coffee, and go, all right, this has happened. Yeah, we got this problem. This is how we plan to resolve it. Let's work through it together. So that's probably the biggest thing that people overlook. Yeah. From there, it's really about having good consultants around you. Solicitor, accountant, financier, to help put the deal together. The structure, the JV agreement or the money partner agreement, allocating the roles and responsibilities. That's probably another thing where people don't actually know what they've got to do in the deal. So they get, if it's not allocated up front. So this is something we do in the 3-day event, where we sit down, we go through all the roles and responsibilities of a project, allocate them to the people. There's like 5 people on a table, and we sort of set up a scenario where we've got a deal in place and who would do what. And what you're doing when you do that is you're formulating the basis of your joint venture agreement. So that you can then take that to the solicitor and go, hey, this is what we want to do. Can you put it into a document that will hold up in court or whatever? But what you're also doing is clarifying all the roles, so everyone knows what they've got to do going forward. Because a lot of the time people don't know, and there's confusion from that, and then from there it can lead to blame if something goes wrong, and that sort of goes down this cascade of potential conflict, and it's ugly. So you don't want to go there at all. So
everyone knows their roles.
And that's how you avoid the scenario. Like, you have all the documentation in place if it does go that way. or if someone dies in the deal, or there's a divorce or something where it affects the project, you have this agreement in place and this documentation that explains everything. But you also have some certainty about, okay, well, you're doing this, I'm doing that. Let's keep each other accountable, and then everyone's clear on where it's going. But as soon as there's a bit of confusion, that's when it can go pear-shaped. So documentation, good consultants, understanding the people involved, and complementary resources that are coming to the deal, not just, oh, let's just bring, Joe Bloggs in because he's a good mate of mine and I want him to share some of the profit. Well, what's Joe Bloggs bringing? Is he bringing cash? He's bringing skill, so that everyone plays a part and they're rewarded, in respect of that.
Yeah, well, it very much sounds like thinking about a joint venture agreement or going into a JV for a property development, for the development of a property. In my mind, it seems like a pretty straightforward thing. You just go, I need some money, I'll just go sign up with this person. But in reality, it sounds like it's more like going into it is, but going into a full-blown business with someone. Like you're not going to start a business and just go, I'm going to go into partnership with this guy and he's good at his job too, we'll surely kill it, and then just go from there. It's like, no, you got contracts in place, you have roles and responsibilities, you have an agreement as to what happens if someone dies or someone gets terminally ill or whatever happens. You've got an agreement, and that level of attention should really be going into those agreements too, which is, I think, a very good point.
Yeah, and you probably take one step back from that as well, where yes, you treat it in a business sense, but you want your joint ventures to be very compartmentalized. So you're not in business with somebody here for the next 5-10 years. You're in business for this one project. And don't look any further past that. So there's a structure set up like a purchasing entity. There's directors involved, there's a deal, there's money, whatever, and that's it. And so get to the end of that, get everyone paid, and then close the book. And that's the end of it. And then you can decide to open another book after that. Or you can decide that sucked. I didn't enjoy that experience with that person or whatever. So we're not going to do another one. But at least we've all exited. And it's not this rolling thing of, we're in bed together for the next 5 years and, something's happened. You really want to make sure none of the outside world infects your project or your joint venture. So try and keep it all separate, because if something does go wrong, you just want to manage that problem. You don't want to be managing someone else's problems. Like a common question is, if someone's funding a deal and they lose their job halfway through, and they said they were going to commit $300,000, and they said, okay, I'll give you 100 now, and then when you get to this phase, I'll give you another 100. That again is fraught with danger, because anything can happen to that person, especially if it's a long deal, it drags out for 12, 24 months or more, or even if it's a short deal, a month or 3 months.
Anything could happen.
They could lose their job, they get hit by a bus, all these things that you don't really think are going to happen, but they could, so that in that scenario, you get all the money in the bank account, it's all there, the deal's compartmentalized, it's not reliant on other people's circumstances, it's there. We're just focusing on the deal and getting it done, because the worst thing in a project is you run out of money halfway, and then you're kind of scrambling and you're going cap in hand for more money. You want to be, building confidence with the people involved in the deal so that you can build this long-term relationship. The ideal way to have it is to have multiple money partners or funding partners so that you can continue doing deals. And in that respect, you want to have this long-term relationship. So you do close the book, but hey, I've got another one here that I want to open up, and let's do that one. We've probably got half a dozen money partners that, you call upon at different times, depending on what their resources are, the timing of their last deal, their skill or their want to be in a project. So you're often just chopping things around, but all the while is building that long-term relationship, so you can continue to fund the project.
Great. So what happens if everything goes wrong? Obviously, I'm not going to drill you down with everything, but what generally do you see happens if something does go wrong and someone wants to pull out, or they have to pull out, or the relationship dissolves? Like, is it as simple as just, well, let's replace that joint venture partner with a different one and just re-sign a different contract? What generally happens?
And this is something, again, you do really early on, like your roles and responsibilities. You sit down with the joint venture partner or partners over coffee or a bottle of wine maybe, and just go through all these what if scenarios and have a bit of fun with it.
Yep.
What happens if another GFC comes? What if a meteor hits the site? Let's flesh it out, because it's fun to do at this point. It's not fun to do later.
Yeah.
When you're halfway through the deal, there's $500,000 on the table. There's stress. The market's going down. And then you got to scramble. And there's nothing put in place. So early on is when things are rosy. That's the time to be fleshing all these questions out.
Yeah.
And then mitigating them. So things like, okay, what if someone got hit by a bus? What happens there? So we build that into the agreement. And that's where the lawyer is really important to cover off on all those scenarios.
Yeah.
So that there's control there. It's not the outside forces, infecting what's happening.
Yeah.
What happens if the market goes down? Okay, well then that's a deal issue. What is the strategy around that? You would have to deal with that anyway.
Yeah.
But bring it on the table early. A lot of deals don't work. People do lose money in projects. So what happens? Do we share that loss? Are you comfortable doing that? Or because it might not make a profit. What if it doesn't? Some things are out of our control. There is risk. And I'd rather scare somebody early on and point out all the risks, but also show how I'm mitigating them. But I want to see how they react, because I'd rather them react now and me find out that, hey, this isn't your bag. You got a different risk profile to me.
Yeah.
Let's do something more risk averse for you. Maybe you can just be a money partner with a second mortgage over the property on a more secure deal where you're more of a silent partner. Maybe that's something you prefer.
Yeah.
So there's so much flexibility in joint ventures. It's really just understanding what's everyone's needs, what's the deal's needs, and then sharing it in that way so that everyone's kind of comfortable with it.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we could almost talk all day, and I know that you run. We're trying to cram like what you do in a 3-day workshop into a 15-20 minute chat. So, if people wanted to find out more information from you about this, where would they go?
I think best place, just go to propertyresourceshop.com. That's our main website. From there, there's some links in the navigation menu to the Property Launchpad, which is the 3-day event that we run 2 or 3 times a year. So when we announce that, we open it up to the community to see who wants to be a part of it. Ultimate Property Hub, like you mentioned, that's our membership site that we run as well, where there's a whole bunch of online resources, and you're a part of that as well, mate, with the content that you bring to the table. But yeah, Property Resource Shop, that's where you can get in contact with me or ask questions or just read some of the hundreds of blogs and different tools that you can download. You can jump on there. But joint venture wise, Property Launchpad is it's a very unique event that is not done anywhere else, in the sense that it's not just education. It's about actually doing deals, so actually bring people that have deals and they present those deals. So that's like an educational thing for people to learn how to propose their deal to a funding partner. But what we're also doing there is money partners in the room, and they end up funding those deals, which is which is really cool. It's not just, hey, here's how you do your JVs. We do all that and have the consultants there to show you through it, but there's a practical experiential point of it as well, where deals actually get funded, and that's when you get a really good return on your investment, both time and money in the event. So it's quite unique, and we get a lot of joy out of running them. So yeah, if that's your bag, then jump on and read a bit more about that, and we can get in touch.
Awesome. Well, I'll put a bunch of links to all of your stuff at the bottom of this webinar or this recording. So thank you very much. Really appreciate your time, and get in touch with Matt if you've got any further questions about JVs, and obviously if you need any planning, give us a call. So thank you very much.
Awesome, mate. Thanks for having me, mate. Always a pleasure to chat, and I'm loving what you're doing there with your business as well, and it's great that we can share this content with each other. So thanks again, mate. Cheers.
No, thank you. Cheers. See you later.
Bye.